Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to do something a little bit different and we're going to look at my process of carving a neck. So the first thing I'm going to do is prepare the fingerboard to act as a datum plane. This neck has just been set, the fingerboard has just been glued on, so we do have a little bit of a bump, a hump in the middle that I need to get rid of because this fingerboard is going to be what ultimately attaches to my neck carving jig, and so it needs to be nice and straight and flat. So I'm going to take care of that now. I'm going to be using my trusty Lee Nielsen number 7 plane. I've just sharpened this bad boy up. Yeah, let's go at it. Alright, so we've got a nice surface. This Munt ebony kind of really made me work for it, but it's nice and flat now. Got that taken care of. I can now take the neck off the body. We do full bolt-on necks on our guitars, which makes neck carving really easy. So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to get it set up in my neck jig 3000. So this is, yeah, it's pretty basic, pretty crude, but it gets the job done. The neck is nice and supported. So yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and take this off and get it all set up. All right, so we've got the neck set up in the jig here in my little Luthier's vise. This is my kind of stance, I guess. This is how I'm kind of going to be positioning myself around the work. I like to have it on the kind of corner of the bench so I can get kind of all around it. I can move this around pretty easily. And every neck carve process is a little bit different depending on which type of wood that I'm using. So we don't always use mahogany. Our kind of main neck wood is mahogany, but we'll use, in this case, cherry. We've used wenge and a cedar, lots of different neck woods. So they all work differently in different ways. We're working to different neck dimensions, different profiles. And so every neck carve is subtly different. And I always find myself working in different ways, using different tools, using different approaches. But basically speaking, I like to kind of break this down into the kind of 3 segments of the neck. So we have the shaft of the neck, we have the volute area, and we have the heel. And it's never like step 1, step 2, step 3. I'll do maybe a little bit roughing out the shaft of the neck, and then I'll work on the volute and the transition into the neck. The same with the heel. I'll work on shaping that heel and how it transitions into the neck. But then I'll come back and work a little bit more on the volute perhaps, and just make sure that all of the transitions are beautiful, because each step impacts the other step. So if I'm taking material off here, I'll end up taking material off the back of the neck. So it's a very kind of organic process, and there's lots of kind of moving around, checking the work, taking breaks. It's a very involved process, and so I try not to rush it. I trust my hands a lot. I use calipers and straight edges and all this kind of thing. So I'm going to get started by roughly marking out the kind of facets of the neck. I'll be using predominantly this tool, which is an RU French-made rasp. It's a hand cut. The teeth on here are hand cut or hand set, so there's an irregular pattern to the teeth. So although it's very aggressive, the cut is very aggressive, because of how the teeth are arranged, you can actually get a really smooth cut. I highly recommend these rasps. They're not cheap, but the time you will save in the long run is well worth. They're very efficient in the cut, and like I said, they'll leave you with a smooth surface. This is the number 3, which I think they refer to as the hog, because it hogs away material really quickly. It's a nice tool. I've had this for a while. It's still nice and sharp. Julian Gaffney turned me onto these rasps during our time at the Somogyi shop. So that's it. So I'm going to get started. I guess we're going to speed this up, put some nice soothing music along to it, and you'll kind of get a sense of what I'm doing and how I am approaching it. And periodically we'll stop and we'll maybe talk about some different tools and different techniques, and talk you through some of my thought processes. Alright, so I've just started to kind of hog out, literally, some of the material. I've just done that in kind of like a faceted fashion. And this neck is way over thickness at the moment. And so now that I've taken out a bunch of material off the sides, I'm just going to start to come in around the 1st fret and around the 9th fret, which are my kind of key areas that I measure to determine the final profile and dimension of the neck. So I'm just going to start to come in here and refine the kind of shape that I'm after. Once I've got those 2 points, then I'll kind of connect the dots, and we'll start to have the back of the neck looking like the back of the neck, as opposed to as a half octagon. Alright, so you can see here that I've got 2 rounded sections, completely rounded, or just about, and I'm using this tool, this profile gauge, to show me what the shape of the neck is. And I've also got my calipers here, and I can see that I'm starting to get it down to the thickness that I want. I've left it pretty well oversized, because there's still a lot of shaping work to do. So now I've got these bits, I can go ahead and take out this material here, and I can start to work into the heel and start to shape into the volute, and then it'll be lots of back and forth. You know, it's a time-consuming process, but that's just the nature of the beast. So I've got the back of the neck pretty well roughed out, kind of happy with the shape that I've got, and dimensionally it's getting pretty close. Still loads of refinement to do on that, but the next thing that I want to do is just start, before I get too carried away with the back of the neck and get too close to where I want it to finish up, is I want to start working on the shape of the heel and how that transitions into the back of the neck. Because if I go too far with this and then leave the heel and the volute till right at the end, invariably when I work on the heel, I'll end up taking material off the back of the neck, which will cause me all sorts of problems. So I like to kind of tackle that bit now and get all that roughed in, so the whole neck is kind of roughly to shape, and then I can go back and start to refine everything and blend everything all nicely together and get it perfectly to dimension. Alright, so starting to work on this transition into the back of the neck here, and at this stage my bench starts to get increasingly more cluttered. So I'm adding different tools to the mix here. We've got Japanese carving files, we've got smaller RU hand-stitched rasps, we've got files, we've even got knives sometimes. It really does just depend which way the wind's blowing as to what tool I feel like I want to pick up at any given moment. I really like this. Is a recent addition, or rather it's a knife that I've had for ages for spoon carving, but I've recently started to integrate it into my neck carving. It's a really nice tool. You can get some really nice results with a knife, very tactile, really nice thing to use. So I just kind of alternate. Really depends on just how the material is working, how the shape is coming along. That's it. That's the heel transition that I'm working on at the moment. I'm going to flip this around and start to do the same thing on the volute. So this process of making the neck is really involved. It takes time. It's dusty. You know, it's a lot of people are starting to use CNC machines now for this kind of work, and you know, I've considered it. We don't have a CNC machine yet, but also, you know, this is fun for me. I like making necks. I like carving. I like shaping. I like taking my time with it, and every neck is different. Every experience, every time I do this, it's different. It's a different experience. The wood tells me something different, and I think there's an element of that getting lost if I just whack this on a CNC machine. So this is starting to look like a neck now. It's really lumpy and bumpy. So now I'm going to focus on getting everything nice and smooth, nice and flat in the areas that it needs to be flat, and just making sure that those transitions are totally seamless and really nicely refined. This is probably my favourite part, where we start to really just delicately, carefully, slowly refine all these curves. Just make everything really smooth, even. To make sure that using the shadow is a really helpful way of just making sure that all the curves are smooth. So for example here you can see that we've got a little lump just there. To be a really nice smooth transition. So right about here still needs some work. So at the moment you can still see that there are lots of marks, lots of tool marks from the rasp. So I'm going to start to work those out whilst maintaining a really flat plane across the back of the neck, and then making sure that this curve on the back of here, on the back of the neck, is really smooth and consistent. There's a couple of ways to do that. First I'm going to switch to using this. This is a number 10, this is an RU again. It's much wider and it's much longer, so I can use the flatness and the length of the tool to really help to keep the back of the neck flat. And then I'll switch to using sandpaper and a board, and I'll show you a technique that I got from Somogyi. So we're really starting to get close now, and for getting the back of the neck nice and flat, I use a technique that Somogyi taught me. I feel like it was something that he came up with. I don't know if I've not seen it in books anywhere else or anything like that. Irvin was pretty ingenious when it came to finding solutions for problems. Quite often you'll hear people saying, you know, if they're new to carving necks, new to guitar building, that they have a problem. They find it difficult to get the back of the neck flat, and they end up chasing the tail, you know, taking material off the neck, and then having to come back and redo the volute, and then having to come back and redo the heel, and you ending up with a really thin neck as a result. Now this technique is basically it's pretty simple. It's just a flat piece of MDF, roughly the same size as the neck, and we've just got some heavy duty sandpaper just stuck to the back of here, And all that we're going to do is I've marked pencil line all over the back of the neck. I'm just using this kind of motion. You can kind of do a little dance if you want, get those knees going. You can start to see, it'll start to take off the high spots, and we'll end up with a neck that's pretty much perfectly flat along its length. It takes a little while, but it's one of the best ways I've found to ensure you can get a flat neck. It's also important to have a really good raking light, so spotlight like this coming in at an angle, and it really shows and highlights up any low spots, any dings, any divots, or anything like that. Important to keep checking the shape. See, I need to do a bit more work on this side. It's looking pretty nice. I'm going for like a medium flat C, I guess, if that's helpful. And then in conjunction, checking my dimensions. So when I did my measurement just there, I noticed that the neck is slightly too thick at this end, more thick at this end than it is around here. We're getting close to where I want the finished dimension to be here. So what I'm doing is using this board, I'm putting all the pressure on this side, so I'm actually removing more material from this end of the neck than this end, whilst keeping everything flat. I'm pretty much there now in terms of the shaping side of things. So at this point, I've moved away from the kind of more aggressive tools like the rasps and the files, and it's down into scrapers and sandpaper. And this is the really time-consuming part, because you are chasing every little area where the thumb kind of gets caught up or the balance feels off. But that's kind of giving you a good insight into like my thought process with neck carving. For me, just as I've said, every transition should feel completely invisible. The curves should all run into each other beautifully. There should be no high spots or areas that just don't feel really soft and organic. The fingertips are really sensitive measuring devices, and they'll pick up the smallest kind of area of lumpiness, or where a curve flows into the next plane, in a way that's not ideal. So at this point, this has taken me most of the day, and I'll probably stop here, give my hands a break, and come back to it tomorrow, I would say. So I'm pretty mentally drained, pretty tired. My hands are starting to hurt now, but I think hopefully you've enjoyed this video about neck carving. I know it's mysterious to some people, so hopefully this has kind of given you a peek behind the curtain. This is new content, a new style of content for us, so if you like it, leave us a comment and like the video as well, because it really helps trick the algorithm into thinking that this is worthwhile watching.